Thank you for joining today's webinar of Manufacturing Committee at HIA-LI. Thank you for your time, much appreciated. Today, we'll be talking about fundamentals of cybersecurity for manufacturing and for other industries. Before we get started, please mute your microphones. Let's keep our microphones muted so that we can have a better sound quality, voice quality, and we can hear each other better. Let's do so. And while I'm getting started, I'd like to talk a little bit about manufacturing committee of HIA-LI. My name is Kevin Devecioglu. I'm with Bimser International, and our company is specialized in certain software products such as quality management, maintenance management, and digital transformation-based software products. That's what we do. I am with our co-chair, Ron Loveland. He's our colleague, our co-chair, and he is with Summit Safety and Efficiency Company. So, as manufacturing committee, we are on a mission. Our mission is to help manufacturers thrive in Long Island, New York area. That's a competitive environment. That's a high-cost region, and we like our manufacturers, our regional manufacturers, to be successful. So, as manufacturing committee, we organize certain events in educational sense. We organize webinars just like today, with an educational setup. We also organize on-site meetings for manufacturers to share best practices, and we invite subject matter experts in different topics so that we can learn from them and we can share ideas. Also, we have a LinkedIn group on LinkedIn, so if you like to join our group, we can also have more chances to share information, some updates together. So I also put the LinkedIn link in the bottom of the page, as you can see, and please join us whenever you're available so that we can grow our group on LinkedIn. As you may remember, we put together various events earlier this year. For example, in January, we met at Microsoft in Garden City, and we talked about digital transformation of manufacturing. We had a group of experts, our panelists, and they talk about various technologies for manufacturing, such as AR, VR. We talk about predictive maintenance technologies available in the market for manufacturing. We talk about ERP technologies. Also, we talk about cybersecurity, if you remember, if you joined. So that was a pretty informative environment, and we had a full house. That was a great day for our manufacturing committee, and we had a chance to also network with other professionals. In February, we had an organization. We had a meeting at Sanation in Ronkonkoma, and we talked about green manufacturing practices, and we also. We heard from other manufacturers as well what they are doing, what they were doing for environmentally friendly manufacturing and operations. So there was another educational meeting that we put together. Starting in March, we started to do various webinars. One of the webinars that we put together was about safety and health and safety management. We invited Kristen Panella from Summit Safety and Efficiency. So he talked about what kind of health and safety management options that we have as businesses, what we should be careful about. And he also talked about some regulations such as OSHA. And we learned many important things from him. That was very helpful. And on April 2nd, we were with Manny Morales from 2M Technologies, if you remember. And he talked about what kind of technology is available for manufacturing. If you like to go to cloud, what kind of steps you should take. And I think the signature piece was the survival guide for businesses during the COVID-19 crisis. You know, what you should be careful about, business owners, about managers and leaders in the business community, and what kind of steps you should take. So that was great insights from many, which we highly appreciated, and we got great feedbacks of. That was another great webinar that we put together. And last week we were with John McHugh from Brainstorm Company, if you remember, if you joined us. And John talked about social media how we can use social media as businesses, and also how we can actually utilize Google Ads to get qualified leads. He also shares some use cases with us, which was also very helpful. It's always good to learn from use cases, like real life, what was the challenge, and how one can actually address those challenges, how you can find the solutions. You are learning from others, so that was a great opportunity for us. So in coming weeks, we'll have more meetings coming up. We'll talk about energy management. We'll talk about 3D printing, paperless business practices, as well as grants available for manufacturers and digital transformation, of course, for manufacturing. These are all important subjects that we'll talk about. Also, we have another meeting coming up tomorrow. Our co-chair, Love Loveland, is organizing it, and I'll also share that with you, the link. I'll send it to you, and then you can join us that meeting as well. That's for tomorrow at 6 o'clock. We send out the invites already. If you didn't receive it, I'm going to be putting the link for registration in the chat box soon, so you can register there. So before we continue with our educational webinar today, I'd like to hand it over to Terry Jimenez from HIA-LI, and she may have some announcements, some up-to-date information that she may want to share with us. Terry, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kevin and Ron. I have some great news for everyone this morning. We have some exciting stuff happening for this month of April. There are two virtual events that we're looking to host. The first one is the member appreciation. It actually was supposed to happen and in person at the end of this month, and unfortunately, due to the circumstances, that has been postponed for probably sometime in June. So for right now, we have the member appreciation. We're calling it a happy hour. Let's get social at a distance. And that should be happening sometime very soon. We're going to be sending out information out to everyone within the next day or so. And the next one is the information meeting. That one is another face-to-face event. This information meeting is going to be now a virtual. So it's an information virtual meeting, and that is going to be open to everyone, whether a member or not a member. If anybody's looking to find out more exactly what the virtual benefits are and any upcoming events, it's just a really great opportunity to take part in, to really truly understand what we have there for our members and those companies who are looking to be part of the HIA-LI family. And lastly, we have also our virtual food drive, and I'd like to see this really get everybody's hands on if it's possible. I know there's a lot of different virtual GoFundMe and all these virtual food drives, but HIA has been doing this food drive for many years, and I've just recently made my 1 year, just a few months here at HIA-LI. It's my second virtual food drive, and this time it's just going to be a virtual food drive, and that's started April 1st. That's going to run all the way through August 30th. And the virtual company that we're doing this through is You Give Goods. And of course, this is the partnership between HIA-LI and Long Island Cares. So this is something that you can have your own page. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. You can just have your own sponsor page, and you just need to register yourself as a member or company that's looking to host their own food drive, and of course extend it out to your business network. We are looking to at least have 20,000 pounds of food. We're hoping that that is something that we can even get past. The hunger on Long Island has increased, especially due to the Long Island schools that are closed, and children are not able to get their free breakfast and lunch through their school districts. And of course, many families that have been lost their jobs and lost their loved ones are really going through hardship with food, and it's a time where we need to really help our communities with providing nutritional foods. So you can do either, you can register and purchase food. The food will be delivered directly to Long Island Cares, or you can just log on to the You Give Goods website and you'll be able to open up your own page with your own logo, own flyer. You'll be able to just blast this to whoever you'd like to, that you feel may be able to make donations. And I think this is something that we're hoping to really try to get through all the way through August 30th. And we really need everybody's help with this. I'll be sending an email probably by tomorrow with the information and a link that will direct you right into You Give Goods. You need help. Mary Lonegren is a VP of corporate, and she would be happy to help set it up for you if you don't have the time to do so. She will take care of it all for you. And I just hope everybody's well and stay healthy. And once again, thank you all so much for being on the call today. Thank you, Kevin and Ron, for all that you're doing. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you very much, Terry. Much appreciated. Thank you for the information. These are important updates from HIA-LI, as the HIA-LI community, what we are up to. So it's good to learn, definitely. Thank you, Terry. So as manufacturing committee, we like to move forward. We like to take advantage of these times to learn many important things that we may use in our businesses. And one of the important things is actually the security, cyber security of our data, of our information. So we may manufacture certain goods, we may provide certain services, but at the same time, we also have to take care of our data. So nowadays, as you know, data is actually more precious, more important than oil. That is how it is. That's how important it is. So in the future, we'll see that whichever business actually can protect their data, can take really important cybersecurity measures, will be successful. That is the key. And we talked about cybersecurity before in our previous manufacturing committee meetings, and that was very, very helpful. So we invited Chris Colicchio as our expert in the subject in cybersecurity. Chris is the CEO of TechWorks Consulting, and he is also a co-chair of Technology Committee of HIA-LI. We work very close with Chris, also with many co-chair of Technology Committee, and as communities, as committees, we work really closely because technology and manufacturing, they go hand in hand. That's a fact. We can never think of any manufacturing without technology. And that is important for us to learn about technology. That's why we keep talking about digital transformation in manufacturing, what kind of technologies are available in the marketplace. And we like to also share this information with our members in HIA-LI as well as in business communities, of course. So having said that, I'd like to invite Chris to share his educational presentation with us. I know he's been preparing for a while, and we are looking forward to hearing from him. Chris, are you ready?
I am ready. I just unmuted myself, so whenever you want to give me control, I'll take it over.
Okay, great. Okay, floor is yours.
All right, we're going to share. All right, great. So I'm assuming everybody can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, great. So what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of, so I've done a couple speaking events for this group, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't repeat myself too much. And recently we've put out a kind of list of what we called myths that the manufacturing industry thought about when they were thinking about cybersecurity, and a lot of the stuff that we've heard from manufacturers telling us how they're not that big and nobody wants their stuff and it's expensive and all that kind of jazz. And what we decided to do was break that out into each one into an individual part, into what we call these primers. And for the beginning set of those primers, we said, well, there's really no more important piece than what we call the human factor. And that is, how your employees handle your data and move forward and take care of, become the first line of defense for your organization. So we wanted to go into that primer and really talk about what it means to, how your employees affect your cybersecurity moving forward. So we figured we'd start with what I think is the most important one, and that's really your employees and the human factor involved in cybersecurity. So let's move forward a little bit. We'll go over a little bit of agenda. So what we're going to talk about today really is your employees and how they're your weakest link in anything that goes on with cybersecurity, and how they're really, we'll see some statistics about what goes on and how employees affect your ability to be secure. So we're going to talk about some of those statistics. We're going to talk about some of the risky behaviors that we see employees do that you might not be aware of. So we're going to go a little bit into that. We're going to talk about how your employees are also your first line of defense. And what we can do to help that. So we'll do a little bit of a demo of an application that lets us talk about how we keep our employees trained, how we keep an eye on whether or not they're actually doing some of the things that we're trying to help them out with. And for those of you specifically that are in that CMMC category, where you have to think about dealing with DFARS and other regulations, this product demo that I'm going to show you really helps you answer a lot of those questions about how you train and take care of your employees moving forward. Then I'm going to do a little bit of a giveaway. So I'll ask a question at the end, and if I get some answers, we're going to do some dark web scans for a few people after this presentation is over, and I'll send you over the information, but I'm going to give a demo of what a dark web scan actually looks like. And then we'll have some questions and hopefully some answers. So that's our agenda for today. We'll get started right away. Let's go over to our first slide and we'll talk about that. So the human factor, I mean, the weakest link in data protection, in your company's cybersecurity, it's the employees. The statistics are out there. We'll go through them a little bit. They're the most important piece that we have to our organizations, but they're also the way that most breaches come in. So we really want to take a look at, the role that they play and how they can enhance our productivity. So I know that, a lot of people they want to get their backups, they want to get antivirus, they want to get all these other things in place, and they're all good, but the statistics bear out that employee negligence really puts the organization at risk. That's really what we're looking at. 70% of all the data breaches, 70% of all organizations have been breached in the last 2 years. Some of them don't know it. And only 8% of those people said that it happened from an external attacker, that it didn't have something to do with the people that are inside their organization making some kind of a mistake, making some kind of a decision that wasn't really in the best interest of security. And I can tell you right now, during this cybersecurity, during this COVID outbreak, there are a lot of scams going out there with wire transfers and phishing attacks for people saying that they're part of Microsoft or they're part of these other Zoom and other things like that are being put out there that your employees need to be aware of so that they don't click on these links and they don't do that. And now that we have employee mobility and we've added that, and a lot of businesses have in a time of need, needed to share out their data and open up VPNs and do other things to get their clients working remotely on laptops and things that aren't necessarily the most secure way to do it, we need to make sure that we look at what the new mobility means, because loss of laptops and the people taking their data and other devices and those kind of things, they represent a really large piece of how our data is lost, our personally identifiable information, the information about our customers, the information about our, our data that we don't want other competitors to see, all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to see that change in mobility is something we need to take a look at too. So why are employees the weakest link of your security? About 95% of them are caused by employee mistakes. Mistakes including falling victim to phishing. So if you don't know what phishing is, I think most people do nowadays. Those are those emails that go out that they look like they're from Microsoft or they look like they're from the CEO of the company, and they're sent out to people to try to get them to click on a link or to change their password, and they're very prominent, and a lot of people have seen them, and there's a lot of good software out there to kind of block these things, but they still get through. They're constantly changing the methods that they do that. Also, spear phishing attack, which isn't mentioned here, but the spear phishing attack are the ones that actually really go out and target specifically the owners of companies or the people who have financial data, and or people who might have access to your private information, and they're really coordinating that information. They know who they're going after, they know why they're going after them, they know what they're going to ask. We had a couple clients in the last 2 weeks that had their websites broken into, and they took over their emails, and it looked the emails they were sending out looked exactly like they were coming from the CEO of an organization asking to transfer money. And if you do that regularly, or if they're used to doing those kind of transfers, then those things can get by, and we've seen it happen in 2 cases specifically where the employee wasn't really aware that that wasn't the person that was interacting them. So there's some methods to train those employees and get up to that. So that carrying of business data outside of the network, we see this happen a lot. I mean, I got to be honest with you, a couple of years back, I found a USB key from a prominent local politician that was just sitting in the middle of a parking lot, and turned it up, and all of their records for Amex cards and employee logins and all of the stuff just left on an unencrypted USB key that was found in a parking lot. And I do recommend, if you do find USB keys in parking lots, that you don't plug them into your laptops. We have secure ways of doing that, but that's also another way that people get violated, is they plug a USB key in. So, but we did find that. So people and what your employees are doing with your data when they're moving around the organization on laptops that aren't encrypted, or these USB keys and SD cards and those kind of things, we really got to be careful about that. The other thing is that we find that losses of devices or even known losses of data or breaches are not really, right now, they're not reported by employees. So therefore, your employees, they're not really helping you with your defense if they're not telling you that they're having a problem. And most of the breaches are, most of the time you realize that you were breached, it happened on accident, not because you were proactively looking for things, or it's because all of a sudden something changed that you weren't aware of, or all of a sudden you're having a ransomware attack, and the files that are coming in, you can't get access to stuff anymore. So those breaches, in fact, we found in one scenario that the breach was going on for probably about an hour or so before the employee reported it, and that's a long time for a ransomware attack to happen. So, it's interesting to know that you got to really get your employees involved in this stuff. So what are some of the risky practices that we see out there for our clients? We see people accessing the internet via these unsecure websites, and if you know if you understand that, these hotspots that you go into, like Panera and other places, if they're coming from the store, they're usually generally, especially from a bigger chain like a Panera or something, they're usually generally set up properly where one client's tablet can't see another client's phone. But what people do is they go into these areas like airports and coffee shops, and they set up fake Wi-Fi access. And then people join into those fake Wi-Fi accesses. And once they do that, all the data that's being streamed across from the Wi-Fi out to the internet, because they open it back up, is being captured by those users. So that's one thing you got to know, is that when you're attaching to Wi-Fi, you really got to be sure that it's the Wi-Fi for the location, and hopefully their business practices, because Wi-Fi, when not set up right, means that people can see each other. But there are ways to set up Wi-Fi both in your organization and when you're on these hotspots, that like the Optimum hotspots or the ones that are in the airports, that segregate your data and make you unseen to all the other people that are using that same hotspot. But we see that a lot, people joining into these fake hotspots that are out there, thinking that because they need to get internet. So not deleting, and I'll say not deleting confidential data that's on their local computers and that kind of stuff, but even more importantly, not putting that data there to begin with. So we find machines, and I found hard drives that were taken out of computers. They put a new hard drive in, and that hard drive, I just pick it up and I put it in a machine, and I can see that there's tons of confidential data in there. So I'll say also not having policies to stop that from happening, but there's a lot of users that even right now are saying, hey, well, I'm using Google Drive, and what used to be confined into the network of just the office, but now that I have Google Drive is being copied over and over again onto everybody's local machine without a lot of control of where that data is going. So there's a lot of confidential information that people have on which might be their own local machines nowadays, because we needed to get them up and running, and they don't have the same standards that might be in the enterprise or on the business machines. So we see tons of sharing passwords. This is practices that go on. Oh, well, I'll just give them my password so that they can log in, or I don't want to change my password. I share my password with others because they use my computer. And these are really bad practices. And the sticky note under the keyboard, or even worse, on top of the keyboard, those things we see all the time. And sharing those passwords through emails. Your emails aren't necessarily that secure, but then you're going to put a username and a password in that email and send it out. So we see a lot of that going on, and we got to talk to methods about how users can use better passwords and not need to share them that way, or set up computers so that if one user logs in to that computer and then the other user logs in, they're using different accounts. So using the same name and password across different websites. I'm going to show you a little example about why this is bad in the future, but that is such a common practice for us that we see everybody, and I know I've done it too, where we log into all these different sites and we have to use them over and over again, and I use the same password for a business account, and I use the same password for my personal when I log into Amazon, and all those kind of things, and we have all these passwords, and we got to talk about how we can stop employees and train employees to use things like RoboForms or Dashlane or other LastPass pieces of software, so that they're not using the same passwords for sites that really have confidential information. What do you log into your corporate domain with versus what you log into your Amazons or your Googles or other stuff with? So using these kind of generic USB drives, we see this constantly. It could be USB drives, it could be SD cards, it could be other stuff, but they just plug them into their computers to do a presentation on, to do all of that kind of stuff, or they grab them from somebody else and they don't know what's on them. So it's kind of risky, to be honest with you, to be using somebody else's USB drive that they say, oh, I'm just going to plug it into your computer. It's kind of a practice you really should stop. And if you are doing it, you should know who it is, and they should be encrypted so that it requires a password or some other kind of authentication before they use that USB key. But we see a lot of that going on. I see it all the time when we're doing presentations, and even I have to do it sometimes. I understand that. On TechWorks' side, we require that there's only one USB key that all of our people are allowed to use, and that USB key is encrypted, so it's lost, nobody can open it up. So there's some policies and procedures around that. Leaving computers unattended, some people do that. They get up, they go to the men's room, they get up, or they don't have policies to lock the computer out. So I've even seen this on some local machines, like in the library and other places, where they've logged into the company website or an online cloud platform that they use, and then they get up and walk away and they don't log out. So that's a lot of like leaving that workspace open so that people can then join on to them. We talked a little bit about failing to notify after a loss of data. That happens a lot. Failing to use privacy screens. I say privacy screens, but I also mean that locking your computer so that if you do get up, you lock your computer when you leave, or it times out after a certain period of time. We've talked about carrying sensitive information over and over again. It happens so often, and most of the breaches a lot of the breaches that you see where there's a lot of data loss, it's somebody left a computer, laptop in their cars, they went in to go get a cup of coffee and they stole it, or a phone or something along those lines. And we see a lot now. This is a new kind of one, not that it's new, but within the last month or so, we see everybody's like, I got to get connected. I use my personal machine, I'm using my personal phone, I'm using my personal devices. And those personal devices are the same personal devices that the kids are doing their homework on, but they're also playing games and they're doing other stuff. So they're more risky machines, those personal devices, and they don't hold the standards that might be required in the organization. So that's a lot of the risky employee practices that we see. And we want to start talking about how like, what do we do about all that stuff? How do we talk to customers, and how do we, how do we talk to our users, and how do we get them to stop doing these risky practices? So I'm going to move over to our next slide and say, not only are your employees your weakest link, but they're also your best defense. And being proactive and reactive, the concept here is that a third of employees that were asked whether or not they had some kind of security training said that they received little or no training on cybersecurity. And about 17% of them, we say that they received, only 17% said they received a lot of training. Well, those are pretty bad numbers. And so as much as I'm blaming the employees and I'm saying, hey, these employees are your weakest link and they're a problem in our organizations, and we have to kind of stop that from happening. The employers and us as business owners, we're not doing a very good job of training our employees and talking to them about what can be done, and what's a phishing email and what's a spear phishing email and what to look out for. We're doing a pretty poor job of that. And the answer to that is that every employee needs security awareness training to help them prevent these mistakes, and we need to be able to track and monitor and look at that and say, hey, what are the best practices? So our businesses need to start looking at these softwares, applications, policies, and procedures that help employees get trained on cybersecurity, because unfortunately, most businesses that get a cybersecurity breach, a good 60% of them, if it's a really bad breach, don't recover from it if they don't have insurance, they don't have other areas. So it's a really good return on investment to both from a training standpoint on your employees. It makes them feel good that they're learning and doing all those kind of things, but also the devastation that we've seen happen by organizations that have been hit with these breaches. And unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common that if some silly little mistake that an employee made could have really stopped this and really save the organization, or save the organization a lot of money. So where we're moving over is I'm going to give you a demo of this kind of an application. So I'm going to stop the slideshow here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to bring over an actual window of an application that we use. So let me know, I believe you guys should be able to see this,
yeah, we can
right?
see. Yes.
Okay, so this is an application, and this is a demo application. I'm actually going to go into some live data too, just so you guys understand. This is an application that we use. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Hold on a second. Okay. So this is an application that we use, and this is demo data of what we can see out here. And I'm going to go, so what we're looking at here is where is the home screen on here? So this data here basically is we're looking at a list of employees and their breaches, what happened to them and why they got breached, and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to go over to an employee. It's going to make me, sorry, I didn't realize that it logged me out while it must have timed out while we were there. Give me 2 seconds. I'll log back into that. All right, so actually, I'm going to move over to the live data because it's just as good information. Okay, so pull this back over. So you're actually looking at a demo set that I set up for TechWorks of what you see here, and I'm a role manager inside our organization, and it allows me to see, to set up users over here in my organization. These are some of my most favoritist users over here, and set them up and start saying, well, what's the risk to our organization? Have they had any training? Are they trained? Can they see what's going on and what the reports are? So I get reports. Now you'll see that me over here, obviously I'm the lowest risk because I took a lot of classes and I've done some other stuff. And what we have inside this organization is that we can get reports on what classes they've taken, what training they've done, and I'm going to go into some of these trainings too. What our security policies are inside an organization. All right, hold on. Obviously these keep timing me out, so you'll see my password manager here.
Security first, huh?
Yeah, that's my password manager. So I use RoboForms. It's a great product. So let me pull this over. I don't want to watch the video. Excuse me. I didn't realize that it would log me out. So give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. I got it. All right, so you'll see here right now I'm as a role of a manager inside this organization, and I have these people here who haven't taken any trainings or classes, or they have a score, a risk score. And that risk score is based off of a lot of things, and we can change that risk score as we get people trained up and use those kind of things. So we can see here we have something called external breaches. Well, what's an external breach, right? So these external breaches, they take a look at whether or not credentials of the users inside our organization have possibly been attacked. Now, the number of employees, so we can get an explanation of scores, and this is basically looking out there to say, hey, you know, have any of our users' credentials been put out there, their email addresses, their login to certain websites and that kind of stuff? Which of the employees that I have listed and with their email addresses are actually already have some kind of a compromise that we need to deal with? It's very interesting stuff that you can see that, you know, the Dropbox was a data breach that happened, and somebody's credentials that was in that group was given out, and Adobe is the same thing. So it's pretty interesting. And then we can go back into, you know, what we see for what the current training classes are. We can sign training classes. We can look at all of this risk management data. They can have access to all of our policies that we set up ahead of time. And then I'm going to go back into this dark web breach again. So this is that scan that I said, hey, well, this is what I'm going to give to somebody for free. This is that scan that says, you know, I'm going to look at maketechwork.com, and I've done this before, so I already know that there's some bad stuff out there that has already been produced about TechWorks, and we've dealt with it already. It takes a little time to get it off, but we've already addressed those issues. But a dark web scan for TechWorks that comes up shows, hey, look, you know, we found 15 data breached accounts and a total of 36 breaches. And what are those breaches? Well, here's these different these are all the email addresses on our website that had some kind of a breach in them, and whether or not they were low, medium, or high. If you look at this one over here, you know, there's 9 breaches on this account. Well, let's take a look and take a look and see why that so many accounts are there. Well, we see that they use some kind of, so these are blurred out, but this person over here uses the same password over and over and over and over and over and over again, and those credentials were probably stolen and put out on the dark web. So we can get explanations of why that score is out there, and we can now go to that person and say, hey, you got to stop using the same password. You got to start training. You got to get them training on why you have to do that kind of stuff. But it's pretty interesting to see that, you know, we've taken it, like I said, we've taken care of this, but it takes a little while before it goes away. But we've had to have some kind of remediation with that, so that they can take care of it, you know. So it's very interesting, and you can do a full report on this. So and get that for the whole entire organization. And that's how you say, hey, my company's more secure. And like I said, when you're doing CMMC or other things that are required in the manufacturing space, then it's kind of really important that you actually have this stuff. But then what I want to do is I want to switch over to what the employee actually sees. So on the employee side, you're going to see I'm Chris Coluccio. I took a couple classes. I got a pretty good score so far. That's my account. It's called Always Watching. You know, and I've taken some of these, I've taken the main quiz that's here, and what I can do is I can go down here and I can say, all right, what we get in a product like this that you might use is that you have all of these you have a main training class where you can take the main security quiz that we set up, and a lot of these are set up by default, but this is a quiz that you can go through, and then you have all of these little trainings that are really cool that you can go through. Like I watched the one on coronavirus scans this morning, and has a little quiz at the end of it. And when you start going through this, it's very easy for your employees to go. A lot of these are 2 or 3 minutes long, and they can start getting trained up and start going through, and it's a single place to go. Now, that being said, whether you use a portal like this or not, it's good to start getting users some of these trainings. And what else? So that's over there. They have security training. We're part of a security newsletter. The security training is the main one. The micro training is out there for those little tiny snippets that we want them to watch, and we can assign to them individually. Our general security policies inside the organization, like, have they read our security policies that we have inside the organization? We need to know that. So, and that's also, like I said, back in the CMMC or any kind of HIPAA in those worlds, they're going to ask you those kind of questions. This is the place where you can go and prove that stuff to them, so they can say that I've acknowledged it, I've read all of them, and then you can actually refresh it every year. Policy acknowledgement report. So which ones have you done? Which ones haven't you done? These people, have not acknowledged the report yet. Obviously, like I said, this is all kind of sample data. So that's it there. Other policies that you might have, and then resources. So let's go. I'm going to go back over to the manager view for a second, and talk about what some of this stuff means. So you see this external breach. I showed you what that was. That's like how many breaches were out there, number of employees whose emails accounts have been involved with an external breach. I talked a little about these micro quizzes. You want to kind of get your employees up to that. This is a phishing fail rate. So what software like this does, and there's other ones out there that do it, and even some of them for free, that send out phishing emails to your employees and see whether or not they click on those links. And in fact, we did this for our employees, and sad to say that we had 3 of the group of 20 so of us that actually clicked on the link and went out there. So you got it, but that stuff happens, and you got to do some remediation on it. So we can see how many of our users weren't trained on that. And this is where you go, you get all your reports. You can set up disaster recovery plans and documents, and then you can manage your employees. So if you want to set up employees to see what's going on, how well they're doing, what part of the groups they're in, and that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty neat application, but the most important part of this is that if you're, it really gets users trained up very quickly. And if you're part of a DFARS or a CMMC for manufacturing, a piece of software like this answers almost all of those security questions when it comes to whether you train, whether or not your employees have seen their policies, whether or not they are aware and have gotten good training, and how you repeat those trainings. So it checks off a ton of boxes almost instantaneously to have a product like that. So that's a quick demo of some of these ways that we can get our users trained up. There's lots of training out there. But what I found from most organizations is that if they're not using a tool like this, they're not really following up, and they can't prove. So if I'm coming in to do an audit on an organization about whether or not they're HIPAA compliant, or they're actually doing the things that they've listed in their DFARS and other areas, and whatever NIST compliance that they need, I'm going, all right, so where's the report that said they took the class this year? Where's the report that said they redid this? And most companies fail at that level. They usually have something good. They have a policy that they put in place a few years back, but it's not accurate anymore, and new people came and went and all that kind of stuff, and they're not tracking it as well as it is. So it's kind of like, yeah, that's an area that you have to work on. So it's nice to say, and what I'm basically getting at is that training for your employees is probably the most important piece, and it's really not that expensive to do, and it could really save a lot of time and money and effort. So with that being said, and I'll keep the demo up too, but I'm going to, so we can switch back and forth between it, I'll go back over to my slide to basically open up for any kind of questions and answer questions or answers that I could answer for anybody regarding training on users, and there's so much I can go into all of these topics with cyber, and I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Very, very insightful, very educational presentation. Much appreciated. We always learn a lot from your presentations, just like we did in previous manufacturing committee meeting. So again, it was actually pretty good. Yes, we have questions, I'm sure. So what we do is, before these webinar start, we actually start engaging with our community members and also followers. So one of the things, for example, that they asked me to ask you was about mobile applications that we use. So nowadays we all have some sort of a mobile device, right? We have smartphones, we have tablets, for example. So in terms of security of those devices, which we use very, very often. I mean, you wake up, your cell phone is right next to you. You go to work, your cell phone is with you. At home we keep using it. So, like from cybersecurity point of view, do you have any take on that?
So one of the things to know is, and I'm going to be, even though I use Android, generally my Apple products are more secure than Android products. There are a lot of what was found in the Google Play Store and in some of the other areas that a good 20 or 30% of all the applications have some kind of an issue with security, if not more. That being said, the first thing so if you buy an Apple product, by default that iPhone is encrypted, where you have to put your code in. If you buy an Android product, by default, it's not required that you encrypt that product. So when you log into the phone, a lot of people don't have that password or the fingerprint or the face recognition set up, and that's where a lot of data is stolen on those. So the first and foremost thing that you want to do is make sure that you have some kind of a key code on your phone. Or some kind of a way to password protect that, because if that phone gets lost or stolen, you want to make sure that users can't get into it. On top of that, from the other side, I mean, when you get into really managing it properly, or getting into somebody who has to do those kind of certifications as an organization that we talk to, you probably should be looking for a remote management tool, or what they call a mobile device management, MDM software. That's what allows you to say, hey, this device left our network, or this device is owned by that person, or you have a tablet, it's only allowed to install the applications that we say it's allowed to install as an organization. Sometimes it doesn't work very well if you're allowing everybody to use what's called bring your own device, or BYOB. But we're trying to get a lot of our organizations to kind of move away from that. So if they're rolling out tablets, especially those kind of things that are being used not as their primary cellular device, but for inside trucks or for inventory management and stuff like that, that those devices are locked down using a mobile device management tool that says, this device, when it starts up, it can only run this thing. It's not going to run if it's not encrypted. We know which users are logging into it, and if we have to shut it down, if it gets lost or stolen, we can get rid of it. If somebody steals it, we can turn it off so it can't access the network anymore. So it's good to have a tool like that to help. If you're doing the bring your own device side of the house, then there's still, you can do those things, but you always wind up with some pushbacks from the user. So there's some other strategies that we can use to at least limit those that stuff. But yeah, it's there are some issues with mobile device, but mobile device management is kind of the solution from a tech side of how to take care of that.
One of the questions that we got in the chat box is, can keyboard encryption work?
Can keyboard encryption work? I'm not sure I understand what there's keyboard encryption from the standpoint of the device that's being sent. So I use a wireless keyboard and mouse, right? That device is, when it sends the data across wireless, that's keyboard encrypted. It's not sending it as a clear text. The issue that you deal with from a keyboard is that whatever you type on the screen, once it's been encrypted and decrypted, you'll be able to see that data. So all of these keyboards that we use, like if you have a soft keyboard on your phone and you start typing, and that data basically starts popping up with like pre-populating, if you type the word dog, or it might say I want to walk the dog, and it puts walk in there, and then dog, and all those kind of stuff. That's all open data that people could see, and they're using that to give you suggestions and know what you're talking about. So I'm not too sure I understand the question of keyboard encryption, and maybe I'm missing something, but we do have to be careful that what we're typing into where that we're not, there are websites out there that are not. So if you look up at the HTTPS on a website, if it's not HTTPS, there's a good chance if you're putting your username and password in that website, it's not encrypted. So somebody, what they call a man-in-the-middle kind of attack, could take a look at that data as it's going across the web or across your computer.
One of the things actually you mentioned during your demonstration was actually risk management. So I think it'll also be very important for us after business life after COVID-19. That's what I call it. So having risk management tools in place, assessing the risk in terms of health and safety, assessing the risk in terms of our business processes, assessing the risk in terms of IT assets, and same thing in terms of cybersecurity, assessing the risk, like based on certain criteria. Then what kind of risk I am exposed to, and how can I reduce the risk? And if something happens, then what am I going to do as a plan B? So this is nowadays, that's the difficulty that we have right now in terms of risk management. So I'm glad that you addressed it.
So this product that I'm showing you now, the one that we use here, and some of the other tools that we have, actually that's what we do. So this is just one piece, but it has a risk management piece built into it, really on the cyber side, but there's larger risk management when it comes to network infrastructure and all these other kind of stuff. So it's actually a very big piece of what we're doing right now for our clients, is that kind of like, let's get a risk management. Let's just know where you are, so that you kind of know what you don't know, because that's what we see with clients, is especially if they have an in-house IT person who kind of took care of it forever, and they trust them, but then we come in there and we say, well, why are you doing it this way, or why are you doing it that way? And I actually have a spreadsheet that I use specifically for manufacturers, and also with HIPAA related, that goes through, it's basically about 340 questions. And when you go through that list, it kind of color codes and it gives them a score of what their risk is, based off of, like I said, cyber infrastructure, software policies, user policies, all that kind of stuff. If nothing else, for your organization, and like I said, it's not the most expensive thing in the world, but it really lets you know where you stand and where you need to work on. So at least you understand that, how you address it in your business, and how you have to address it based off of the different industries that you're in. Might discuss how you move forward, but what we find is that most people don't even understand the basics of whether or not they're enforcing passwords, or why in their Active Directory there's still 80 users when they're only a 20 user person company, and why that's a bad thing.
Yeah, these are very important for everybody. So one of the things actually we are having difficulty in business world right now, and also even with the government perhaps, is being unprepared, right? Being unprepared, basically. So in terms of risk assessment, either we never thought about this would happen, or we thought about it, but we never put certain policies and procedures in place. That's why we are having difficulty. So one of the actually situations that we have right now is working from home, okay, remotely. So that is another thing. So not only most of the companies, including the official government organizations, never thought about this. Also, they have no background. They have they never prepared for this. So you are working from home. You are connecting your systems directly. Hopefully, you have systems. There are companies, working on paper, Excel sheets. They're totally in trouble, if you ask me. But assuming you have the ability to remotely access, at least you have email, let's say. So that's also one of the questions in the chat box. That's what I'm trying to connect. So from the employer point of view, you are working from home. You are connecting your systems. At least you are using your email, and you are connecting certain maybe portals via your web browser. So what kind of steps you can take from home in terms of cyber security? So you are not in the office anymore. You are home, but you are responsible still as an employee to what action that you are taking. So what do you recommend in that sense?
So one of the things I always recommend is two-factor authentication. I mean, it's becoming a big buzzword, but it's really important. A lot of people don't like it. It's a step that gets taken. It's an extra thing we need to do. But that's when you get a text message on your phone, or an authentication software on your phone that says, hey, are you logging into my network? Are you logging into my Office 365 account? Is this you? You're logging in from a different computer. So a lot of two-factor authentication is all of this stuff that we do when it comes to cybersecurity, it's not a perfect science, but what we're really trying to do is to make your footprint smaller than some of the other people out there. And that might sound bad, but we want to make your organization look less enticing to those hackers and to those people that want to get your data. And we do that because if you have two-factor authentication on your Office 365 account or your business line application, and the other users don't, they're going to skip over you and go to the easy targets. So two-factor authentication is one. I recommend that you have some kind of a remote management tool, like something that monitors the computers, make sure that they have the right antivirus, make sure that they're getting patched, make sure that they're holding the standards of the organization. But what we find is that a lot of organizations don't have all those standards set up yet. Secondarily, one of the things that's bothered me a lot about what's going on now is that every company we're talking to is saying, set me up a VPN, set up a VPN, set up a VPN, set up a VPN, and put a VPN on my computer and all that kind of stuff. And we hear this over and over, but they're not doing it necessarily properly, because if you open a VPN, let's say on your personal computer at your house, between your business and your personal machine, that now opens the entire network up, and if it's not set up right, which most of them aren't, then the potential problems that you have on your local PC with using free antivirus, or your kids are going out to websites that have all of these flash games and other stuff that are on there, you're opening up your organization to have problems that you wouldn't have had before. And not only that, if you have full access through that VPN to the data that's on your network, then either a compromised machine or somebody else who sits at that machine now has full access to your network. So there are ways to secure up VPNs, but like I said, what most people are doing is they're saying, just set me up a VPN, and then they're opening up their business to the outside machine that's maybe not as secure. So be careful when you set up your VPNs. Make sure you ask that they're doing things like limiting the IP addresses that can enter into those VPNs. Don't do open remote access, or RDP is what they called. I see this. We just came off of another client who's a manufacturer, and every user was logging in with a directly open port on their firewall remotely into those machines. That is like the #1 way that clients are trying to get in. It's called remote access through Microsoft, or RDP. Do not let your IT person open that up without having some kind of a encryption set up. Use the softwares like the LogMeIns, or we have TechWatch. There's other pieces of software, TeamViewer, AnyDesk. Use a piece of software like that, much more secure than opening up RDP.
Thank you, Chris. Also, in the meantime, I need to mention, we keep our contact information on the screen. So after this meeting, if you'd like to continue this conversation, if you have any questions, you can contact us. I am also sharing Chris's contact information on the screen as well for future reference. So one of the things actually you mentioned, Chris, is having the policies, procedures in place. So I believe the compliance piece, at least from the quality management point of view, for companies to comply with at least ISO 9001 compliance, also very important in a way that, the system, the quality management system actually encourages you to have policies and procedures in place. So having said that, you can have these kind of policies and procedures in place as well in terms of, cybersecurity, IT risk management assessment, for example. Also, I think we'll think about in the future, more and more, I believe, remote connections, working from home, from the employee.
I don't know how I gotta be honest with you, almost all of the companies that we've worked with that have failed haven't had a piece of software in them that manage this, similar to what you guys do at Bimser, other pieces of strategy software, those pieces of software that allow you to know that the document's been updated, that it's been seen by people, that the policies have been read, and that they're not old, or those pieces of software that offer control and put this all kind of in one location. I don't know, almost every time we've seen the failures, it's, oh yeah, we went through this a year and a half ago, and here's our policies, and then they're trying to scramble to get all the different policies from different areas and not kind of centralizing it around a piece of software, whether it's a Bimser or SharePoint or other places like that. Or a piece of software like I showed you for managing your compliance in just the cybersecurity piece. that's why we see places fail over and over again. It's because they set up a policy once, they thought it was good, but nobody really knows about it. They can't prove that the users, have gotten it. It didn't make it into the handbook, or a new version came out, and there's just a lot of that. And without a good piece of software that's managing that, it's really, really tough.
I agree, definitely. That's what we see also in the market in terms of like putting policies and procedures is one step, which is a lot of work, by the way. You gotta put a lot of thoughts in it, and then you put this together, and the next step is sharing with the team members. So I need to let them know. I need to let my colleagues know. Okay, these are policies and procedures. Please read them. If you have questions, please ask me. And then if something happens, if you need this, that, you read that, you read this, you follow the instructions there. So that is another challenge. I agree. So that is also very important for companies. And hopefully it'll also be more and more important, moving forward with this COVID-19. We also need to learn certain lessons, like being prepared, having risk assessment in place, and based on these risks, having certain action plans in place. So that's going to be also very, very critical in coming days. And hopefully, just like you mentioned, it's not going to be just on the paper, on a document. It'll be in action, so that anything unforeseen or anything that you thought about it as a risk, you prepare certain plans. At least we can put them in place. Another question. Also, we are running out of time, so I'll address more questions if we have any more. One of them is about budget. So last week we talked to John McHugh, right, from Brainstorm Company, in terms of marketing point of view. So we talk about all these marketing activities, which is very, very important. And one of the piece of information that he shared was about the budget. How much budget we should have as business managers, business owners, business community members. Basically, how much we should put in our budget as for marketing. So from cybersecurity point of view, what should be the budget, right? So eventually what happens is this. So when you are making this kind of investment, it's an investment. So there is a certain risk in place, that is for sure. So you see it as a business owner. So you like to take action, okay? But at the same time, you need to also, you need to make the cost and benefit analysis at the same time. So, what is the ideal budget for these? How a company, a business owner can invest in it. So that may be a small business, there may be a mid-sized business, basically. But cybersecurity, my data, his data, any company's data is very important. As I mentioned earlier, it's more important than oil, more precious, more valuable than oil right now. The data, that is what it is. So what would you comment for the budget?
So I don't see cybersecurity, when you're thinking of a budget, I don't know that I want to see cybersecurity much separate from the total IT budget that you put out there, because putting efforts into buying a piece of software like I'm showing you, or using these other people to come in and give you audits and those kind of things, without actually updating and doing all the work and all the other stuff that goes along on the other side of it, is kind of like it's a holistic thing that needs to be thought of and taken to an approach. So I can give you the scary side of what Gartner says businesses should be spending on their IT, including their salaries, including all of their technology, included the software that they're spending. And Gartner's saying that you should be spending somewhere around 3% of revenue, 3 to 4% of revenue if you're a really high-tech organization. That's a lot of money, right? And what we see on our client side, we see clients that are successful in this area spending somewhere at least 1.5 to 2% of revenue on their total IT spend, including their cybersecurity and including that area. But usually what the strategy is, and I say this on the side, is somebody like myself, TechWorks, is part of that strategy, because we can eliminate some of the needs to have a whole bunch of expensive employees, and we can lower some of the costs on their software so that we can bring those numbers down. That being said, buying a tool like this is not very expensive. For that tool that I showed you, it might be $100 a month or $150 a month. It's not a lot of money, but if you're not doing it as a holistic effort, and there's different levels of this tool, but if you're not doing it as a holistic effort, then it's really not worth it. You got to be invested in technology and doing it right as a whole. Just saying I'm going to do cybersecurity you know, you're going to go down a rabbit hole that, you know, like I said, you have to invest in the training of the users. You have to invest in having good equipment. You have to invest in having somebody keeping an eye on it and having the right antivirus software and having all of those pieces. And that does take some money, but a good company that is looking at it. And I say this, if you do technology right, whether it's cybersecurity or whether it's just processes or whether it's software applications, every piece of that should be a return on investment. And we should be talking about how if you went from spending 1.5% to 2%, you're actually going to make more money with your technology. Or if you went from 2.5 to 2 to 2.5% of your revenue spend on technology, you're actually going to make more money, which is similar to marketing. But that, my answer to you is, let's figure out what you need to accomplish. The budgets, you know, when you talk about them properly, they should really be a return on investment. You should get better processes out of it. You should have less likely to be cyber attacked. Your people should be more efficient because you're using the tools properly. So that's really the goal. The budgets, like I said, I gave you kind of roundabout numbers that they're saying. Gartner's way off for what we see in our clients, but very successful clients are spending a decent amount of IT, but they're making more money on it than they're spending.
Yes, that's very important. Correct. Also from I think a compliance point of view, I think if customers start, corporate customers start requiring this kind, request this kind of cybersecurity actually measures in place. You know, let's say we are doing business, let's say I'm getting certain services or certain products from you. You know, just like compliance piece, right? So many companies, they comply with ISO or for example, GMP, for instance, good manufacturing practice, other standards, because that's what the customers are asking for. Without this compliance, they won't even have conversation with you in terms of sales or business, for example.
I mean,
so that has to be
unfortunately. Yeah, so just to add to that a little bit is that what we've seen traditionally from, especially in the manufacturing space, is IT was seen as a $0 budget, and everything that they had to spend on IT was seen as like, oh God, I don't want to spend that. I could spend the least. It was never seen as something that they really costed into the real budget of the organization. So many of them said, if I can get away with zero, I'm going to get away with zero. Even though there was never really a zero, but it just was like ancillary to them. And now we have to say, I mean, I really see, like, you know, DFARS and these other NIST certifications and all these other certifications that have been out there have really done a disservice to the industry, because they said, oh, well, if you answer this question correctly once, we're never going to check you again. And the industry has gotten much more mature now. And with CMMC coming out and some of the other compliances that are out there, they are now asking you to prove this on a regular basis. And they're saying, we're not going to do work with your organization if you don't. So if, and this came out from the Department of Defense first, but if you work with big vendors, if you're working with, they're going to follow this. So I honestly think it's a good thing, because it makes us more secure. It stops our data from being stolen. And if you've seen my other presentations, you've seen how China has stolen plans to our aircrafts and submarines and things, that they're producing the exact same stuff because they were stolen from manufacturers inside the United States. That happens all the time. We want to be able to stop that. So these certifications that are coming out now that are proving that these clients are actually doing the things they do, I feel when they actually are implemented and when companies take over it, and I had a conversation with East West, they feel that it actually helped the productivity of their, you know, there was such a challenge to do, but when they completed it, they were a better company, a more secure, more productive, and had better processes in place because of it than they had before when they were trying to avoid it.
Chris, thank you very much. Thank you for a great presentation, very educational demo, and great answers to questions and great discussion. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So,
No problem.
as I mentioned earlier to our attendees, I keep the contact information on the screen. If you have any questions, if you'd like to continue this conversation, please feel free to do so. In the chat box, I put two links. One of them is for the committee meeting of tomorrow. We'll be meeting with manufacturers. We'll have some sort of a discussion about the current situation about COVID-19 and how manufacturers are coping with it. So please register. It's an Eventbrite page. Hopefully you see it. Maybe I'll post it again for those who join a little later. So you can register and you can join us. Also, I put the link of our LinkedIn group. Please join us. Please join our group so that we can, share information. We can stay in touch easily. That is also available in the chat box for you to follow. So, as businesses, what we like to do is we like to move on. We like to understand what's going on. We like to realize it. We like to take the lessons. We like to learn from it, and lessons learned based on that. We like to move forward from today forward. That is how we like to also design our meetings and our webinars and our committee meetings. Let's learn as much as we can. Let's assess the situation in our businesses and how we can move forward. Because there is going to be two things from now on. There is going to be life before COVID-19 and life after COVID-19. So we are going to the after part right now. And as businesses, we need to have policies, procedures, IT infrastructure has to be ready, in place, based on our budgets, whatever that may be. And also, we need to make sure we also communicate with our customers. That makes a difference, because if you are a company, if you have certain cybersecurity features, cybersecurity policies in place, if you are taking certain measures, if you have IT infrastructure that is actually helping you become more productive, that is also a competitive edge. And that requires communication with your customers. That's how you're going to make the difference from the other guy, basically. That's also important. If someone is on paper, literally, and we see it all the time, and if you are on an IT infrastructure running much more modern, you comply with certain standards, just like Chris mentioned, or those that I mentioned, for example. And on top of it, you're also securing the data that you have coming from your vendors, coming from your customers. That's your competitive edge as well. Not in addition to being secure, and in addition to being more proactive and productive for sure. So having said that, again, I'd like to thank Chris for his time and sharing for his insights. Appreciate it as always. And we are looking forward to, of course, more cooperation with Technology Committee of HIA-LI, which Chris and many are heading. We are always open for new meetings, joint meetings, hopefully. And I'd like to thank our attendees. Thank you for your time. I have recorded this committee meeting, and I'll be also sharing the link with you as to recording, so you can watch anytime you like, and you can share with your team members.
So, Kevin, can I just add one thing?
Yes, Chris.
So just, I forgot to mention that if anybody wanted that free dark web scan, they can reach out to me at chris@maketechwork.com, and we'll get them a scan of their email addresses and what might be potentially out there. So I forgot that we skipped over that when we went to Q&A. So those are available out to anybody who joined. Just let us know if you're interested in it.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate it. That's a great service for the business community. Yes, definitely. So we keep your contact information on the screen so we can contact you. Again, thank you, Chris, for your time. We appreciate it. And you're always welcome to our committee meetings and panels. And I'd like to thank our attendees. Thank you for your time. And we are looking forward to seeing you in our coming manufacturing committee meetings of HIA-LI. Thank you. Stay safe and have a nice day.